I'm Jonathan Broadbent, founder and creator of Unwoke Academy, where our mission is to defund the woke. Parts of this will prove easier than others. Today's episode is all about super easy. You're going to love this one. If you've ever had that experience of finding a $20 bill when you wash your jeans, this is like that, only billions of times better. I'm going to start us off today with the serenity prayer. You'll understand why in a moment. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What do 21 different state attorneys general, Secretary of State of Indiana, American Airlines Pilots Union, parts of the Texas legislature, and the New York City Workers Union have in common? The answer is that they're all starting to push back hard against the use of what I call woke on Wall Street. Things like mutual funds used to have a very defined due diligence process. That's just a fancy way of saying how to select the investments to put your money into, or how to determine which ones to avoid. Fairly recently, that whole system was kind of turned on its head, and new types of metrics were put in place and utilized that were arguably very woke. Things like sustainable and diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental, social, and governance, as ill-defined as they are, were used to make determinations about how to invest your money. You probably already instinctually know where I'm headed with this, but let's spell it out to be clear. If you're investing money in 401k or IRA or elsewhere for a better future for yourself, one of the things that you should rightfully expect is that the people helping you to make those investment decisions should certainly work in your best interests and have a clear, articulated investment process. And you should rightfully expect that whatever that process is, it isn't anti-American, anti-West, which I argue a lot of the woke stuff is. If you've been watching Unwoke Academy for any length of time, you may have caught the interview that we did with Justin Bernier from the National Security Index. In that interview, Mr. Bernier outlined for us a presentation that was done to Congress, U.S. Congress, in early 2024, spelling out the use of what are called offshore managers to invest U.S. savings dollars. That means your 401k, IRA, and things like them into the growth and expansion of the Chinese Communist Party. And specifically, they highlight several companies that lead to the expanding military capabilities of the Chinese Communist Party. We, the people, American and Western investors, don't really want that. We don't ultimately approve of that. And when people are made aware that their money is going toward those type of investments, people choose to pull their money. Ultimately, there is one unavoidable financial truth. What we fund today will become the future that the next generation inherits. If you find yourself doing a little mental fist pump when you see "Go Woke, Go Broke," or hear things like "Make America Great Again" or "America First," you should know that on February 21st of 2025, President Trump issued something called the America First Investment Policy. It instructs banks and the world of finance to direct investment dollars into American ingenuity, rather than a small number of woke globalist companies that have been getting overfunded for the past 5+ years. The reasons for them getting so much funding have everything to do with those artificial metrics that were used that I call woke, like DEI, ESG, etc. So, in other words, a very small number of companies that checked a whole bunch of woke boxes, did a lot of virtue signaling, got a lot of the money. This ultimately led to a series of posts, videos, and research into what we now call the globalist bubble. The globalist bubble, in short, is the overfunding of a very small number of companies based on their woke virtue signaling, which has the added negative effect of underfunding virtually all other companies. So where capital markets used to be a resource for business growth and economic development, we've gotten to the point now where we have just a small number of globalist companies receiving the lion's share of the funding. That's a double negative, and it's exactly polar opposite the America First investment objective. This is not to say that funding American companies only is the way to go. Certainly, many people choose to invest internationally, but invest internationally in a smart way that isn't harmful, destructive, or counter to American and Western values. Remember the third part of the Serenity Prayer that focuses on the wisdom to know the difference? A lot of people are very understandably focused on Doge, USAID, and some of the funding of the woke left that appears to take place via non-governmental organizations and nonprofits. And while that may hold true, it's going to be a while before we can reliably affect some change there. Inside of your 401k, your IRA, and other types of investments, which I argue is kind of the other half of woke funding, that's an easy change to affect. Last year, 2024, I actually decided to drill down and get better answers on your behalf from money managers. By money managers, I mean things like mutual funds, asking them in a formal request for information about any use of virtue signaling labels like ESG, DEI, and things like them. I actually received exactly 0 formal answers. However, I did have well over 200 phone conversations with people at money manager outfits. Overwhelmingly, the answer that I got from the individuals I spoke with off the record was they didn't really like it, but they felt powerless to stop it. That tells me that the directives from many of these money managers, from the owner and leadership teams, was to go woke, in spite of all consequences, and in spite of what damage may result to your portfolio. On a personal note, in around 2007, 2008, I noticed a trend on Wall Street, while working on Wall Street, of artificially funneling US savings dollars into a company called BlackRock. They weren't nearly as big and household name in 2007 as they are now, but I saw it as an artificial way of bypassing the typical safeguards in order to funnel and direct IRA, 401k, union, pension, and other types of long-term retirement savings dollars into BlackRock. That commentary on my part led to a lot of trouble and some threats from the lawyers. At Unwoke Academy, we make our research and findings public in the hopes that many people out there decide to go unwoke. Let's stop funding the woke, or as we like to say, dis the globalist left. That stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend. This special episode is part suggestion, part recommendation, and part ask. Of course, you personally can make an impact. If you make changes to wherever you invest and however you invest to take money away from the woke left, we can all make an impact. However, my area of expertise and the focus that I have had for decades in the world of finance is in retirement plan administration. I'm asking you in this conversation to do one of a few things. Your choice. Did you know that there is an estimated $46 trillion in U.S. retirement savings? Of that, about $13 trillion is in 401k plans. That's an easy shift to make if we put our mind to it. Let's talk about the structure of things like 401k plans and who gets paid off of them. Let's use an average fee of 0.75%. In my world, we refer to that as 75 basis points, but you don't need to remember that. Applying a fee of 0.75% has an impact on U.S. retirement savers of an estimated $220 billion. Just looking at the 401k portion alone is about a $97.5 billion marketplace. That's money that comes out of your retirement savings to pay for things like a plan advisor. The screen you see behind me illustrates a small difference of 0.75% on a very small amount. We actually started with only $10,000 in savings. By many estimates, there's around $500,000 during your lifetime that disappears out of your account. That's money that gets siphoned off and goes to pay a plan advisor. I'm not going to comment on the competency or skill of that advisor. Let's assume for the moment that they're doing a really good job of servicing your plan the way that you might hope. For a recent podcast, I wanted to see the impact on $100,000 with a 1% fee over 30 years. 1% is typical to find in small plans, and actually you'll find some very small plans with fees north of 1%. That is a significant burden to retirement savers, especially small savers just starting out. The thing that most people don't know, because it's seldom talked about, is there is no actual requirement that the employees of a company offering a 401k plan are the ones that have to pay the fee. In fact, there is no stipulation that the employees have to pay the fees for any of the providers connected to a plan advisor or otherwise. This isn't commentary on the use of a plan advisor. There are some companies that don't have a plan advisor. The ones that do should push and expect the very best service at the lowest possible fee. What we end up with often is the opposite. To put this conversation and my perspective in context, I started feebased401k.com. That was my original website, and later added feebased403b.com in 2009. I've been having this conversation with employers actually far longer than 16 years. Going back to 2006, I was advocating for this type of arrangement, and it's proven very successful in a number of different arenas and regard. I'm not referencing myself to suggest that I'm the only one that can do it. I'm bringing it up because I'm one of very few that will do it. Virtually any firm or plan advisor out there could do it. However, there's an incentive not to do it. The reason it's not often done or talked about has to do with transparency and accountability. It's much easier to collect a hidden fee that's sort of out of sight, out of mind for most people. And let's face it, be honest, when was the last time you actually opened up that fee disclosure document and thought about the impact of that fee over the lifetime of your saving? Now contrast that to a plan advisor or their company having a simple to understand flat fee arrangement directly with your company. If the company is writing a check, the chances are roughly 100% they're going to be paying attention to what they're getting in return for that money. Start with your current plan, exactly where it is and the way that it is, and with your current plan advisor, and see if you can get that major change done at your company. Whatever sort of fee your company may arrange with your plan advisor, if they decide to pay it directly, you and all your colleagues who contribute to the 401k plan or have money in it end up to the good. It simply means that your account will end up in a much better position, all else being equal. If your company is able to arrange a flat fee figure to pay the plan advisor directly, they'll want to go to their tax advisor and make a determination of whether or not there's a tax write-off. I would think there should be. The other thing to consider is that for companies starting a 401k plan for the first time, there is a dollar for dollar top line tax write-off to start a plan of $5,000. So some of that cost, if they choose to go that route, can be written off directly. And that's at a time when in startup plans, fees are typically very high inside of 401k plans. It's important to note that no part of this should be construed to mean that I disapprove of 401k plans. They are actually a phenomenal savings vehicle to save for retirement. I'm simply suggesting that you know how to advocate for yourself and get the lowest possible fees with the highest possible service. There's no better position, I suggest, than being in a flat fee environment. If your company does decide to make changes to the structure of their 401k plan, and remember, this isn't even addressing the plan provider, the investments, or any of that. Let's assume for now that all of that stays intact. The only thing we're discussing changing is the way that the plan advisor gets paid. Consider throwing my name in the mix as well. I hope that most companies out there have a great, skilled, competent plan advisor who's willing to make that shift to fee only. But I know from experience that many won't. If you run into that roadblock, consider me. My intention is to bring a lot more conversation about woke versus not woke investment options. That's for a variety of reasons. If you haven't watched the episodes where I talk about the consolidation of markets and way too many people being invested in virtually the same or nearly identical types of investments and the harm or threat that that represents, I call it globalist bubble, and those sorts of things, I'd like to bring more meaningful conversation to expanding those options in a way that gives you and your colleagues investment options that are not woke. That doesn't mean replacing everything with something else. And by the way, there is no conflict of interest in this discussion. I have no affiliation with or connection to or means of making money off of any of the things that I might suggest. I simply care enough about our great American workforce and the future of our economy that I'd love to see more workplace retirement plans, including things that are not woke, that help to capitalize and fund the businesses of the future. So toward that end, I came up with a flat fee of $5,000. I want to put that in perspective. When I worked on Wall Street, I actually was not permitted to engage with or talk to any company if the revenue that the Wall Street firm derived if they were paid anything less than $10,000. So we're talking about a total figure that is much lower than that. And I actually targeted it because that is the tax credit threshold for startups. If companies are paying $100,000, or technically right now the employees of the company are paying $100,000, move that to zero and keep $100,000 in the accounts of employees. The one request that I have is at least let me have some conversation with the company about adding non-woke investment alternatives. That means simply that I want to bring all the research, all the reporting that I've been doing at Unwoke Academy at a high level to the people running your workplace retirement plan. I think they'll like what I have to say, especially when we strip the politics and the left bent of a lot of the investment alternatives out of the plan. At the end of this video, you'll see my contact information. If you're at all curious about this or want steps to move in the right direction, call me. Don't forget to like and share this, but of course, call people that you know or send emails, or the next time you speak with a friend, family member, or colleague who works in business administration, human resources, or benefits administration, or just a rank and file employee somewhere who is interested in reducing their fees and hopefully considering what they're funding with their investment dollars.